The last carriage out of Laramie had left Faith Kennedy with nothing but dust in her lungs and desperation in her heart. The relentless Wyoming sun beat down on her back as she trudged toward the lone ranch visible on the horizon, her once fine dress now travel-worn and her reticule containing only pennies. It was 1878, and the promise of a new life in the West had turned bitter when her brother's letters stopped coming 6 months ago. She'd arrived to find his homestead burned to the ground, his fate unknown, and herself utterly alone in Whispering Creek. Faith paused to gather her courage before approaching the weathered 2-story ranch house. Smoke curled from the chimney despite the summer heat, and the sound of cattle lowed in the distance. A large sign hung over the gate, Blackwater Ranch. Horses dozed in corrals nearby, and the smell of fresh baked bread wafted through an open window, making her empty stomach clench painfully. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. As Faith approached the porch, the door swung open. A tall man with broad shoulders filled the doorway, his face shadowed by a worn Stetson. His eyes, the color of a summer storm, assessed her carefully. "Can I help you, madam?" His voice was deep and gravelly, like he didn't use it much. Faith swallowed hard. "I'm looking for work, sir." The man's gaze traveled from her dust-covered boots to her sun-reddened face. "What kind of work?" "Any kind. I can cook, clean, sew. I noticed your kitchen window is open, and I smelled bread. I could work in your kitchen." She lifted her chin, determined not to show how desperate she truly was. He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms over his chest. "Don't need help." Faith's heart sank, but she persisted. "Please, I'm a hard worker. I won't ask for much. Lady, I run this place with just me and a couple of hands. Don't need a housemaid." "Then what do you need?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps, at her boldness. He studied her for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Faith Kennedy." "Mine's Beau Erikson." He pushed his hat back, revealing sun-streaked brown hair and a face weathered by years under the open sky. "You got family around here?" Faith hesitated. "My brother, but I can't find him." Beau's eyes narrowed slightly. "James Kennedy?" Hope flared in her chest. "Yes. Do you know him?" The cowboy's expression darkened. "Knew him. He worked for me last season. Went missing after a cattle drive. Some say he took off with his share. Others." He didn't finish the thought. Faith's knees nearly buckled. He wouldn't just leave. Something must have happened to him. Beau studied her face. "You look like him. Same stubborn chin." After a moment's consideration, he stepped back. "Come in. You look like you're about to faint." The kitchen was warm and surprisingly clean for a bachelor's home. Beau gestured for her to sit at a rough-hewn table while he poured coffee from a pot on the stove. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked bluntly. "Yesterday," Faith lied. "Uh-huh." He didn't believe her. He cut a thick slice of bread, slathered it with butter and honey, and placed it before her. "Eat." Pride warred with hunger, but hunger won. She tried to eat slowly, with dignity, but the food was gone in moments. Beau watched her silently, then cut another slice. "Your brother was a good worker. Quiet. Kept to himself. Didn't seem the type to run off, but men change out here." Faith shook her head. "James came west to make enough money to bring me out properly. He wouldn't just disappear." "Maybe, maybe not." Beau refilled her coffee cup. "What's your plan now?" "Find work. Find my brother. Town's 15 miles back. Not much work for a single woman except." He let the implication hang. "I'm not that desperate," Faith said firmly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Good." They sat in silence as Faith finished her second slice of bread. Finally, Beau spoke. "I'll make you a deal, Miss Kennedy. I need someone to keep house, cook, tend the garden. Hired hands complain about my cooking, and this place could use a woman's touch." Hope rose in her chest. "You're offering me a job?" "Of sorts." His gaze was steady. "Can't pay you much in coin." Faith's heart sank. "Then what?" "I'll pay you in love if you'll stay with me." The words hung in the air between them. Faith stiffened. "Sir, I'm not that kind of." Beau held up a hand. "You misunderstand. I'm offering you protection. A home. My name, if you want it." Faith stared at him, bewildered. "You're proposing marriage? To a stranger?" "It's not uncommon out here. Men outnumber women 20 to 1. I've been alone too long." His eyes held hers. "I won't touch you unless invited. You'll have your own room." food on the table, and I'll help you look for your brother. Why would you do this? Like I said, I knew your brother. Decent man, and I could use help around here. He paused. Also, you remind me of someone. Who? Someone I couldn't save. He didn't elaborate. Faith's mind raced. The proposition was madness. Yet what choice did she have? Alone, with no money, no connections. I need time to think, she said finally. Beau nodded. You can stay the night. Spare room upstairs. Decisions yours in the morning. That night, in a real bed for the first time in weeks, Faith stared at the ceiling. Marry a stranger? The idea was preposterous. Yet Beau Erikson had been nothing but respectful. And if James had worked for him, perhaps this ranch held clues to her brother's disappearance. In the morning, she found Beau at the kitchen table, coffee already made. I accept your offer, she said before she could change her mind. But on one condition. Beau raised an eyebrow. If I find my brother, or if after a reasonable time I wish to leave, you'll release me from our arrangement. He considered this, then nodded. Fair enough, though I hope by then you might want to stay. Faith doubted it, but she extended her hand. Then we have an agreement. Beau's large hand engulfed hers. Welcome to Blackwater Ranch, Miss Kennedy. When do we marry? Faith asked, practical despite her nervousness. Judge comes through town next week. Beau rose. Until then, you have my protection as my intended. Faith nodded. 1 week to change her mind. 1 week to find another solution. Or 1 week until she became Mrs. Beau Erikson. The ranch hand's 2 brothers named Cooper and Matthew Wilson arrived mid-morning. They looked at Faith with undisguised curiosity. Boys, this is Miss Faith Kennedy. Beau introduced her. James Kennedy's sister. She'll be staying here. We're to be married next week. Cooper, the elder brother with a thick mustache, nearly choked on his coffee. Matthew's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly, tipping his hat. Pleasure, madam. Your brother was a good man. You knew him too? Faith asked eagerly. Rode with him last season, Matthew confirmed. Fine hand with horses. Do you know what happened to him? The brothers exchanged glances. Last I saw him was at the cattle sale in Cheyenne, Cooper said carefully. Had his pay. Said he was heading to town to send some money home. That was 8 months ago, Beau added. Faith's heart sank. And no one's seen him since. The men shook their heads. I'm sorry, Miss Kennedy, Matthew said genuinely. After the hands left for their daily work, Faith explored the house. It was solidly built but neglected. Dust gathered in corners, windows needed washing, and the pantry was woefully understocked. Still, it was better than most frontier homes' 2 stories, with 4 bedrooms upstairs, a parlor, dining room, kitchen, and Beau's study downstairs. She found Beau in the barn, mending tack. I'd like to start earning my keep, she said. What needs doing most? Beau looked up, surprise evident on his face. You don't have to start working yet. I prefer to be useful. He nodded slowly. Kitchen needs organizing. Pantry's a mess. Do what you think best. Faith spent the day cleaning the kitchen from top to bottom. By dinner time, surfaces gleamed, and she'd prepared a simple but satisfying meal from the meager supplies available. When Beau and the hands came in, they stopped in the doorway, staring at the transformation. Something smells mighty good, Cooper said appreciatively. Faith had managed to stretch the remaining beef into a hearty stew with the vegetables she'd found in the neglected garden. Fresh biscuits accompanied it. Sit, please, she invited, suddenly nervous. The men washed up and took their places. An awkward silence fell as they waited. Oh, should I say grace? Faith asked. Beau looked surprised but nodded. They bowed their heads as Faith offered a simple blessing. The meal passed with minimal conversation, but the empty plates spoke volumes. When the hands excused themselves, Beau remained, helping Faith clear the table. You didn't have to do all this, he said quietly. I wanted to. Faith glanced at him. I know our arrangement is unusual, but I won't be idle while I'm here. What if you don't find your brother? Beau asked. What then? Faith paused in her washing. I don't know. I haven't allowed myself to think that far ahead. You should. His voice was gentle. Out here, people disappear. Sometimes by choice, sometimes not. James wouldn't abandon me, Faith insisted. He promised our parents before they died that he'd send for me when he was established. Beau didn't argue, but his expression was skeptical. Do you think he's dead? Faith asked bluntly. Beau considered his words carefully. I think if he could have contacted you, he would have. The implication hung heavy in the air. Faith turned back to the dishes, blinking away tears. That night, she wrote in her journal, I've agreed to marry a stranger to survive. What would mother say? Yet Beau Erikson seems honorable, if distant. And this place connects me to James. I'll find you, brother. I promise. The days passed in a flurry of cleaning and cooking. Faith discovered the garden had once been productive, but had fallen into neglect. She spent hours pulling weeds and salvaging what vegetables remained. On the third day, Beau brought home supplies from town: flour, sugar, coffee, fabric for clothing, and even some books. I didn't know what you might like to read, he said almost shyly, presenting her with 3 volumes. Faith was touched by the gesture. Thank you. That was thoughtful. He shrugged. Figured you might get bored out here with just us for company. That evening, she found him in his study, poring over ledgers. May I ask you something? She ventured. Beau looked up, surprised by the interruption. Of course. Why did you really offer to marry me? And don't say it's because you need a housekeeper. He set down his pencil, considering her question. Sit, please. Faith perched on the edge of a chair. When your brother worked here, he spoke of you often. Proud of his educated sister. Said you were smart, capable. Beau paused. When I saw you on my porch, same determination in your eyes. Despite being half-starved, I knew who you were immediately. That doesn't explain why you'd marry me. I've been alone a long time, Miss Kennedy. This land, it takes everything from a man. Your will, your heart, your soul, if you let it. His eyes met hers. I've worked 15 years to build this ranch. But what's the point of it all without someone to share it with? You could court a woman properly. A sad smile touched his lips. Women are scarce out here, and I'm not much for courting. So I'm convenient. You needed help. I needed something else. He shrugged. Seemed like providence. And if we find we don't suit, then you're free to go, as we agreed. He looked at her steadily. But I hope you might give this a chance. Real chance. Faith felt a strange flutter in her chest. I can't promise to love you. I'm not asking for promises. Just possibility. She nodded slowly. I can offer that much. The wedding day arrived sooner than Faith expected. The circuit judge, a portly man named Holbrook, performed the ceremony in the ranch house parlor. Cooper and Matthew served as witnesses. Faith wore her best dress, freshly laundered, and Beau wore a clean shirt and his least worn trousers. The vows were simple, practical. No mention of love, just honor, protect, and cherish. When Judge Holbrook pronounced them man and wife, Beau hesitated only briefly before placing a chaste kiss on Faith's lips. It was her first kiss. Brief as it was, it left her flustered. The judge stayed for dinner, regaling them with tales of frontier justice. Before departing, he pulled Beau aside for a private word. Faith pretended not to notice the serious expressions on both men's faces. That night, true to his word, Beau showed Faith to her own room, now properly furnished with a dressing table and curtains he must have purchased in town. I hope you'll be comfortable, he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. It's lovely. Thank you. Faith. He rarely used her given name, and it sounded strange on his lips. I meant what I said. I won't ask anything of you that you're not ready to give. She nodded, suddenly shy. Good night, Beau. Good night. Mrs. Erikson. The door closed softly behind him, leaving Faith alone with her thoughts and her new name. Summer turned slowly to autumn. Faith settled into a routine at the ranch, finding unexpected satisfaction in bringing order to the once neglected home. She planted a proper garden, canned vegetables for winter, and even learned to make soap using fat rendered from the slaughtered cattle. Beau remained true to his word, never pressuring her for wifely intimacies. They developed a comfortable companionship, sharing meals and occasionally reading together in the evenings. Faith found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, the way his hands moved confidently over tools, how his eyes crinkled when he laughed at something Cooper said, the gentleness he showed with new foals. One cool October morning, Faith rode with Beau to check on a distant part of the property. They stopped to rest near a stream, and Beau pointed to a half-built structure in the distance. What's that? Faith asked. Was going to be your brother's place, Beau said quietly. He staked a claim on that parcel. Started building before he disappeared. Faith stared at the abandoned cabin, emotions churning. Why didn't you tell me before? Didn't want to get your hopes up? There's nothing there to find. You don't know that. Faith turned her horse toward the structure. Beau sighed but followed. The cabin's foundation and 2 walls stood complete. Building materials lay scattered about, weathered by months of exposure. Faith dismounted and walked through what would have been the front door. He was really doing it, she whispered. Making a home. He worked hard, Beau acknowledged. Took extra shifts, saved every penny. Faith knelt, brushing dirt from a wooden box partially buried near the wall. She pried it open to reveal a small collection of personal items, a pocket watch, letters from Faith, a daguerreotype of their parents. He wouldn't have left these, she said, voice breaking. Something happened to him, Beau. Beau knelt beside her, examining the box. I've asked around town, sent word to Cheyenne. No one's seen him. Someone must know something. Faith clutched the watch. I can't just give up. I'm not suggesting you do. Beau's voice was gentle. But you might need to prepare yourself for the possibility that you won't get answers. Faith looked at the unfinished walls. He had such dreams. You could still claim this land, Beau said. It's rightfully yours as his next of kin. What would I do with it? Whatever you want. It's good land. Faith tucked the watch and letters into her pocket. Can we come back? I'd like to gather anything else that might be his. Of course. Beau helped her to her feet. We'll bring the wagon next time. As they rode back to the ranch, Faith asked, Do you think there are people who might have wanted to harm James? Beau was silent for a long moment. Your brother wasn't well liked in town. Why not? He kept to himself. And Beau hesitated. There was a woman, Viola Thornton, shopkeeper's daughter. They were sweet on each other, but her father disapproved. Was it serious? Serious enough that there was talk of elopement. Then suddenly, they weren't speaking. Week later, your brother disappeared. Faith absorbed this information. You think she knows something? Worth asking, maybe. When they returned to the ranch, Faith found Cooper waiting with news. Riders coming, he reported. 6 men armed. Blackwood's men. Beau's expression hardened. Get inside, Faith. Who's Blackwood? She asked, alarmed by their reactions. Victor Blackwood. Owns the next ranch over. We've had disagreements. Over what? Water rights, mainly. He thinks the Western Creek should be his exclusively. Beau checked his pistol. He's not a man who likes to hear no. Faith watched from the window as 6 riders approached. Their leader, a corpulent man with a silver-streaked beard, dismounted heavily. Erikson, he bellowed. Come out and face me like a man. Beau stepped onto the porch, stance relaxed but alert. What can I do for you, Blackwood? You can explain why your cattle are drinking from my creek again. It's not your creek. The water rights were settled last spring. Settled wrong, Blackwood spat. Judge Holbrook was in your pocket. The judge ruled fairly, based on survey maps. Maps can be redrawn. Blackwood's gaze shifted to the window where Faith stood. I see the rumors are true. You found yourself a wife. His smile was ugly. Pretty little thing. Too good for the likes of you. Beau's voice remained steady. State your business or leave. My business is simple. Keep your cattle away from that creek, or next time they wander over, they won't wander back. Is that a threat? Consider it neighborly advice. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. By the way, how's that search for your missing hand going? Kennedy, wasn't it? Shame what happens to men who cross the wrong people. Faith gasped. Beau's hand moved imperceptibly closer to his gun. You know something about Kennedy's disappearance? Beau asked quietly. Blackwood shrugged. Just saying, men who make enemies don't last long out here. He mounted his horse. Remember what I said about the creek. After the riders departed, Faith confronted Beau. He knows something about James. Maybe. Or maybe he's just trying to get under my skin. Beau's jaw was tight. Blackwood's dangerous, Faith. Stay clear of him and his men. If he hurt my brother, then we'll deal with it. Properly. With the law. Beau placed his hands on her shoulders. Promise me you won't do anything rash. The intensity in his eyes startled her. I promise. That night, unable to sleep, Faith slipped downstairs for tea. She found Beau in his study, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring at a worn photograph. Who is she? Faith asked softly. Beau started, then sighed. My wife, Clara. He handed Faith the photograph of a pretty, dark-haired woman. You were married before. It wasn't a question. 5 years ago. She died in childbirth. Both of them did. The pain in his voice was still raw. Faith sat beside him. I'm sorry. I swore I'd never marry again. He took the photograph back, touching it gently. Then you showed up on my doorstep. Why me? Because I needed help. Partly. He looked at her directly. But also because when I saw you standing there, so determined despite everything, I felt something I thought had died with Clara. Hope. Faith's breath caught. Beau, you don't have to say anything. He set the photograph down. I know our arrangement is practical. I don't expect more. But something had shifted between them. Faith reached out, covering his hand with hers. I'm glad I found your doorstep. His fingers curled around hers, warm and strong. The next morning, Faith rode into town with Cooper for supplies. While he loaded grain and tools, she slipped into Thornton's general store, heart pounding. A young woman about her age stood behind the counter, arranging bolts of fabric. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her movements were listless. May I help you? She asked without looking up. Are you Viola Thornton? The woman's head jerked up. Who's asking? Faith Kennedy, James Kennedy's sister. All color drained from Viola's face. You shouldn't be here. Please, I just want to know what happened to my brother. Viola glanced nervously toward the back room. I can't talk about this. Not here. Then where? When? After a moment's hesitation, Viola scribbled on a piece of paper. Meet me here. Tomorrow. Noon. Faith tucked the paper into her pocket, just as a heavy-set man emerged from the back. Viola. Who's this? His voice was sharp. Just a customer, father. Looking for fabric. Mr. Thornton's gaze was suspicious. Haven't seen you before. I'm new to the area, Faith said smoothly. Mrs. Erikson. From Blackwater Ranch. His expression darkened. Erikson's wife? We don't need your business here. Father, Viola protested weakly. No, it's all right, Faith said, backing toward the door. I'll shop elsewhere. Outside, she bumped into Cooper. Everything all right, Mrs. Erikson? You look shaken. Fine. Just. The shopkeeper was rude. Cooper snorted. Thornton's a piece of work. Whole family is trouble. Faith frowned. What do you mean? Just that they're thick as thieves with Blackwood. Thornton owes him money. This was unexpected information. Are you sure? Everyone knows it. Blackwood holds notes on half the businesses in town. Faith pondered this as they rode home. If Thornton was indebted to Blackwood, and Blackwood hinted at involvement in James's disappearance, she decided not to tell Beau about her planned meeting with Viola. He would only worry or, worse, forbid her to go. This was her brother, her responsibility. The following day, Faith made an excuse about needing time alone to visit James's homestead. Beau looked concerned but didn't question her. The meeting place was a small church on the outskirts of town. Faith arrived early, heart racing with anticipation and fear. What would she learn? Did she really want to know? Viola arrived precisely at noon, glancing nervously over her shoulder as she slipped inside. I can't stay long, she said breathlessly. Father thinks I'm delivering an order. Thank you for coming. Faith studied the young woman's face. You and my brother. Cooper said you were close. Viola's eyes filled with tears. We were going to marry. Run away together. She twisted her hands. Then he disappeared. What happened, Viola? Please, I need to know. Viola looked down. It's my fault. All of it. What do you mean? James found out something. Something about Mr. Blackwood. Evidence that he was rustling cattle, changing brands. He confronted him. Faith's blood ran cold. Alone. Viola nodded miserably. I begged him not to, but he said it was the right thing to do. A tear slid down her cheek. The next day, he was gone. His horse was found wandering near the North Ridge, but no sign of him. And no one investigated? Sheriff Mills is in Blackwood's pocket too. He said James probably fell, animals got to him. Case closed. Viola met Faith's eyes. But I know Blackwood did something to him. I just can't prove it. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm leaving. Got family in Denver. This may be your only chance to know the truth. Viola hesitated. There's something else. James had a journal. He kept it in a hollow tree near your husband's south pasture. Said if anything happened to him, the proof would be there. Faith's mind raced. Did you tell anyone else about this? No. I was too afraid. Viola stood abruptly. I have to go. Please. Be careful. Blackwood is dangerous. After Viola left, Faith sat in the empty church, processing what she'd learned. A journal. Evidence. If she could find it, perhaps she could finally learn her brother's fate and bring his killer to justice. She rode directly to the south pasture, scanning the tree line. The property was vast, with hundreds of trees. How would she ever find the right one? Think, Faith. James would have chosen somewhere memorable. Her gaze fell on a distinctive oak, larger than the others, with a lightning scar down its trunk. It stood apart, easily identifiable, perfect for a secret hiding place. Faith dismounted, circling the massive tree. About 5 feet up, she found it a hollow just large enough to slip a small book inside. Standing on her saddle, she reached in and felt the smooth leather of a journal. Her hand closed around it just as a voice called out. "Afternoon, Mrs. Erikson. Bit far from home, aren't you?" Faith nearly fell in her haste to turn around. 2 riders approached, men she recognized from Blackwood's group. She quickly tucked the journal into her bodice. "Just exploring my husband's land," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Funny place to explore." "All alone." The taller man dismounted. "What were you reaching for up there?" "Nothing. Just checking if a bird's nest was active." The men exchanged skeptical glances. "Why don't you come with us?" the second man suggested. "Mr. Blackwood would sure like to meet Erikson's new wife properly. Another time, perhaps. My husband is expecting me." "Erikson doesn't even know you're here, does he?" The first man stepped closer. "Miss Thornton was mighty chatty after you left." Her pa made sure of that. Faith's heart sank. It had been a trap. "What do you want?" "Just a friendly chat with the boss. About your brother, among other things." Faith backed away. "I'm leaving now." "Don't think so, madam." The man reached for her arm. Faith reacted instinctively, kicking him hard in the shin before scrambling onto her horse. She dug her heels in, urging the animal to a gallop. Shouts and pounding hooves followed her as she raced across the pasture. The men were gaining, they were better riders, and their horses fresher. Faith steered toward a wooded area, hoping to lose them among the trees. A shot rang out, spooking her horse. Faith struggled to maintain control as the animal veered sharply. Another shot, closer this time. The horse reared, and Faith felt herself slipping from the saddle. She hit the ground hard, pain lancing through her shoulder. Her horse bolted, leaving her alone as the men approached. "Now that wasn't smart, Mrs. Erikson," the taller one said, dismounting. "We just wanted to talk." Faith scrambled backward, clutching her injured shoulder. "Stay away from me." The sound of more hooves thundering toward them froze everyone in place. 3 riders burst from the trees, Beau, Cooper, and Matthew, rifles raised. "Touch her, and it'll be the last thing you do," Beau growled, his voice deadly quiet. The Blackwood men raised their hands slowly. "Just having a friendly conversation," Erikson, one said. "With guns drawn?" "Try again." Beau dismounted, keeping his rifle trained on them as he moved to Faith's side. "Are you hurt?" "My shoulder. I fell." Faith leaned against him, trembling with relief. Beau's eyes darkened with fury. "Cooper, Matthew, escort these gentlemen to the property line. Make sure they understand what happens if they return." As the hands led the men away, Beau carefully helped Faith onto his horse, then mounted behind her, cradling her against his chest. "How did you find me?" she asked weakly. "Cooper mentioned you were acting strange in town yesterday. When you went out alone, I followed at a distance." His arms tightened around her. "Why did you lie to me, Faith? You could have been killed." "I'm sorry. I needed answers about James." "And did you find them?" Faith touched the journal hidden in her bodice. "Maybe." Back at the ranch, Beau insisted on examining her shoulder himself. His touch was gentle as he cleaned a scrape on her collarbone. "Nothing broken," he pronounced. "You're lucky." Faith caught his hand. "Beau, I need to tell you what I learned." Over tea at the kitchen table, she recounted her conversation with Viola and showed him the journal. Beau listened without interruption, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. "I always suspected Blackwood," he said finally, "but without proof." Faith opened the journal, and they read through James's neat handwriting. He detailed discovering altered brands on cattle, overhearing conversations about rustling operations, and finally, his plan to confront Blackwood directly. The final entry read, "If anything happens to me, look to Blackwood. I've copied the evidence and hidden it in town with Attorney Davis. Faith, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I couldn't keep my promise to send for you. Know that I tried to do what was right." Tears streamed down Faith's face. He knew it was dangerous. Beau closed the journal gently. "We need to take this to Judge Holbrook. He's honest, and he has no love for Blackwood. Will it be enough? With Viola's testimony, and if we can find this attorney Davis. Maybe. Faith stood suddenly. We need to warn Viola. If Blackwood knows she spoke to me, I'll send Cooper into town tonight, Beau promised. But you're staying here where it's safe. That night, Faith couldn't sleep. The pain in her shoulder was minimal compared to the ache in her heart. James was almost certainly dead, killed for trying to expose a criminal. And now she'd put Beau and his men in danger too. She slipped from her bed and padded to Beau's room. After a moment's hesitation, she knocked softly. "Come in," he called, sounding fully awake. Beau sat on the edge of his bed, a lamp burning low beside him. He wore only trousers, his chest bare in the dim light. Faith tried not to stare at the lean muscles or the scars that mapped his skin. "I couldn't sleep," she explained unnecessarily. "Neither could I." He moved over, making space for her to sit beside him. "Are you in pain?" "Not physically." Faith sat, suddenly shy. "I keep thinking about James. And about you." "Me?" "You've risked so much for me. A stranger who arrived on your doorstep. You're hardly a stranger now." His voice was soft. "You're my wife. In name only." Beau's eyes met hers. "Is that what you want? Just a name?" Faith's heart raced. "No," she whispered. "Not anymore." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her cheek. "I meant what I said that first day. I'd pay you in love if you stayed. I thought you were just offering protection. At first. But Faith." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "I've been falling in love with you since you served that first meal. Since you made this house a home again." Faith leaned into his touch. "I was so focused on finding James, I tried not to notice how I felt about you. But today, when those men were chasing me, all I could think was that I might never see you again." Beau's kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Faith responded eagerly. Her hands explored the warm skin of his shoulders, tracing scars and the contours of muscle. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "Stay with me tonight," Beau murmured against her hair. "Just to sleep, if that's all you want." Faith nodded, suddenly certain. "I want to be your wife. In every way." Beau drew her down beside him on the bed, his hands reverent as they explored her body through the thin cotton of her nightgown. Faith trembled, not from fear but from the intensity of her feelings. "I love you," she whispered as his lips found her neck. "I didn't expect to, but I do." His eyes, when he looked at her, were filled with wonder. "I never thought I'd hear those words again. Never thought I'd feel this way again." They came together slowly, Beau patient and gentle with her inexperience. Pain gave way to pleasure as they learned each other's bodies, whispering endearments in the darkness. When it was over, Faith lay cradled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Was that all right?" Beau asked, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. Faith smiled against his skin. "More than all right. I meant it, Faith. I love you. Not because you needed me, or because I was lonely. Because you're you. And I love you. Not because you saved me, but because of who you are." She traced patterns on his chest. "No matter what happens with Blackwood or finding justice for James, I'm staying. This is home now." Beau's arms tightened around her. "Then I'm the luckiest man in Wyoming territory." Morning found them still entwined. The world changed forever between them. They dressed quietly, exchanging shy smiles and casual touches that held new meaning. Cooper returned as they finished breakfast, his expression grave. "Viola Thornton's gone," he reported. "Her father claims she left for Denver yesterday afternoon. But her things are still in her room, and the station master says no young women boarded the eastbound train." Faith's hand flew to her mouth. "Blackwood has her." "Most likely," Cooper agreed. "And there's more. I spoke with Attorney Davis. Says he never received any documents from James Kennedy." Beau frowned. Either James never delivered them, or Davis is lying. "Why would he lie?" Faith asked. "Davis handles Blackwood's legal affairs. He wouldn't cross him." Faith clutched the journal. "So we just have this. It's not enough, is it?" Beau shook his head. "Not on its own. We need Viola's testimony. Then we have to find her." Faith's voice was determined. "If Blackwood has her, she's in danger. We can't just ride on a Blackwood's property," Cooper pointed out. "He has twice our manpower, and they're all armed. We need the law on our side," Beau said thoughtfully. "Judge Holbrook is due back through town in 3 days. If we can hold off until then." Faith shook her head. Viola might not have 3 days. What are you suggesting? Beau asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. I could get onto Blackwood's property. As a woman, I'm less threatening. Absolutely not. Beau's voice was firm. After yesterday, they'll be watching for you specifically. Then what do we do? Beau paced the kitchen. We need leverage. Something to make Blackwood negotiate. Cooper spoke up. What about that water rights dispute? Blackwood needs that western creek for his cattle. Are you suggesting we dam it? Matthew asked incredulously. Not dam it. Just redirect it. Temporarily. Enough to get his attention. Beau considered this. It would bring him to the table. But it's risky. So is doing nothing while Viola might be in danger, Faith pointed out. After further discussion, they developed a plan. Cooper and Matthew would begin work on temporarily diverting the creek, making it obvious enough that Blackwood's men would notice. Meanwhile, Beau would ride to the nearest telegraph office to wire Judge Holbrook, requesting he return sooner. Faith insisted on being useful. I'll go into town, ask around about Viola. Someone must have seen something. Beau was reluctant but agreed on the condition that she take his pistol and stay in public areas. And be back before sundown. No exceptions. The town of Whispering Creek was busier than usual, with a cattle buyer's train expected the following day. Faith moved from shop to shop, asking casual questions about Viola's whereabouts. Most people avoided her gaze or changed the subject. At the milliner's shop, however, she found a more willing informant. Mrs. Parker, a chatty widow, leaned close across the counter. Heard shouting from the Thornton place last night, she whispered. Then saw a covered wagon leave out the back way. Mr. Thornton driving, and one of Blackwood's men riding alongside. Did you see Viola? No, but where else would they be going at that hour? And with a wagon instead of the usual buggy? Mrs. Parker adjusted her spectacles. They headed north, toward Blackwood's hunting cabin, I'd wager. Hunting cabin, up in the foothills. Blackwood takes his special guests there. Her tone implied these guests weren't always willing. Place is remote. No neighbors to hear anything. Faith thanked the woman and hurried to the sheriff's office, hoping against hope that he might help despite his alleged connection to Blackwood. Sheriff Mills was a thin man with a perpetually sour expression. He barely looked up when Faith entered. Mrs. Erikson, isn't it? What can I do for you? I'm concerned about Viola Thornton. She's missing. Mills sighed. Her father says she's visiting relatives in Denver. Without her clothes or personal belongings. Without purchasing a train ticket. Not my business how a young lady travels. Mills finally met her gaze. Look, Mrs. Erikson, I understand you're new here, so let me explain something. Folks around here mind their own business. Suggestion is, you do the same. Is that what you did when my brother disappeared? Minded your own business. The sheriff's expression hardened. Your brother was a troublemaker. Made accusations he couldn't back up. He had evidence. Of cattle rustling. So he claimed. Never produced it, though. Mills stood. Now, if there's nothing else. Faith held her ground. What about Judge Holbrook? Would he consider this worth investigating? A flicker of unease crossed Mills's face. Judge won't be back for weeks. Actually, my husband telegraphed him this morning. He's returning early. This was a bluff, but it hit its mark. Mills's jaw tightened. I'd be careful making accusations, Mrs. Erikson. Dangerous for a woman alone. Is that a threat, Sheriff? Just friendly advice. He gestured to the door. Good day, madam. Outside, Faith took a steadying breath. The sheriff wouldn't help might even warn Blackwood. She needed to get this information to Beau immediately. As she untied her horse, a weathered old man approached, leading a mule. Mrs. Erikson? His voice was a raspy whisper. Faith tensed. Yes. Name's Harlan. Used to work for Blackwood till my accident. He held up a maimed hand. Heard you asking about the Thornton girl. Do you know something? Harlan glanced around nervously. She's at the hunting cabin, all right. Overheard Blackwood's foreman talking about it at the saloon. Said they're keeping her there till after the cattle sale tomorrow. Why after the sale? Buyers coming from Denver. Blackwood doesn't want any trouble till they're gone. He hesitated. There's something else. They found a body last spring, up near the North Ridge. Faith's heart stuttered. My brother? Don't know. They didn't tell me much. Just that Blackwood ordered it buried deep where no one would find it. Tears pricked Faith's eyes. Thank you for telling me. Be careful, madam. Blackwood's got eyes everywhere. With that, Harlan shuffled away, disappearing down an alley. Faith rode home as fast as her horse would carry her, mind racing with this new information. If James's body was buried near the North Ridge, they could find it, prove he'd been murdered, and if they could rescue Viola, get her testimony. The ranch was quiet when she arrived. Too quiet. No sign of Cooper or Matthew. Beau's horse was in the corral, so he must have returned, but he wasn't in the house. "Beau," she called, moving from room to room. A groan from the study drew her attention. She found Cooper slumped in a chair, blood seeping from a wound on his temple. "Cooper, what happened? Where's Beau?" Cooper winced as she helped him sit up. "Blackwood's men, 8 of them, caught us working on the creek. Matthew got away, but they took Beau." "Took him where?" "Don't know. Said Blackwood wanted to talk to him about water rights. And about you." Faith's blood ran cold. "When? Hour ago, maybe." Cooper pressed a handkerchief to his wound. "I tried to stop them, but they blindsided me." Faith helped Cooper clean his injury, mind working furiously. If Blackwood had Beau, and Viola too, time was running out. "We need to find Matthew," she decided. "And we need help." As if summoned by her words, Matthew burst through the door, rifle in hand. "They took Beau," he panted. "We know," Faith said. "Cooper told me. I followed them," Matthew continued. "They're taking him to Blackwood's hunting cabin. Same place they're holding the Thornton girl." Faith's resolve hardened. "Then that's where we're going. Just the 3 of us? Against Blackwood's crew?" Cooper shook his head. "It's suicide. Judge Holbrook is coming," Faith reminded them. "Beau telegraphed him. Even if he left immediately, he won't arrive before tomorrow," Matthew pointed out. Faith crossed to Beau's desk, removing his pistol from the drawer. "Then we need a plan that doesn't rely on the judge." By nightfall, they had cobbled together a desperate strategy. Matthew would create a diversion by starting a controlled fire near Blackwood's main ranch house, drawing men away from the hunting cabin. Cooper, despite his injury, would position himself on a ridge overlooking the cabin with a rifle, providing cover if needed. Faith would approach the cabin directly, using the darkness and her status as a woman to get close enough to assess the situation. "This is still too dangerous," Cooper argued. "Beau would never approve." "Beau isn't here to approve or disapprove," Faith replied firmly. "And every minute we wait puts him and Viola in more danger." They set out just after midnight, traveling cross-country to avoid the main roads where Blackwood might have men watching. The hunting cabin was tucked into a remote valley, a small but solid structure with light glowing from its windows. From their vantage point in the trees, they counted 2 men on guard outside, with at least 2 more voices audible from within. "Remember," Faith whispered as they prepared to separate, "no unnecessary risks. If anything goes wrong, we retreat and wait for the judge." Cooper nodded grimly. "Be careful, Mrs. Erikson." "Faith," she corrected him. "After tonight, I think we can dispense with formalities." Matthew squeezed her shoulder before disappearing into the darkness, heading toward Blackwood's main property. Cooper positioned himself on the ridge, rifle ready. Faith waited until she saw the distant glow of Matthew's diversion fire before making her move. She approached the cabin from the rear, keeping to the shadows. As hoped, one of the guards rushed toward the main house when a rider came to alert them about the fire. With only 1 man remaining outside, Faith's chances improved. She circled to the side of the cabin, peering through a small window. Inside, she could see Beau tied to a chair, his face bruised but his expression defiant. Viola sat huddled in a corner, tear tracks staining her cheeks. Blackwood paced before them, gesturing angrily. Faith couldn't make out the words, but the scene was clear enough. She needed to act quickly. Gathering her courage, she stepped into the open, approaching the remaining guard directly. "Help," she called, feigning distress. "Please, my horse threw me. I'm lost." The guard turned, startled. "Who are you? How'd you get here?" "Please," Faith continued, moving closer. "I've been wandering for hours." The man raised his lantern, illuminating her face. Recognition dawned in his eyes. "You're Erikson's wife." Before he could shout a warning, Faith drew Beau's pistol from her skirt pocket and brought it down hard on the man's head. He crumpled without a sound. Heart pounding, Faith dragged him into the shadows and took his keys. The cabin door was locked from the inside, but there might be another way in. She circled the structure, finding a small window at the back that opened into what appeared to be a storeroom. Inside the cabin, Blackwood's voice rose. "The girl says you have Kennedy's journal. Where is it?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Beau's voice was steady despite his situation. "Your wife found it. Where would she hide it?" "My wife is smarter than you give her credit for," Beau replied. "By now, that journal is probably in Judge Holbrook's hands." A sharp slap echoed through the cabin. Faith winced, then focused on the window. It was small, barely large enough for her to squeeze through, but it was their best chance. She used the guard's knife to work the latch free, then eased the window open. With a silent prayer, she hoisted herself up and through, landing softly in what proved to be a pantry. Voices continued from the main room. Faith could now make out two men besides Blackwood, one standing guard by the door, another lounging near the fireplace. All were armed. She needed a distraction. Her gaze fell on a shelf of mason jars. Grabbing one, she threw it hard against the far wall of the pantry. It shattered loudly. "What was that?" Blackwood demanded. "Probably a rat," one man replied. "Check it out," Blackwood ordered. Faith pressed herself against the wall beside the pantry door. When the man entered, gun drawn, she swung the butt of her pistol at his head. He staggered but didn't fall. Faith struck again, desperately, and this time he collapsed. "Jenkins," Blackwood called. "What's going on in there?" Faith's mind raced. Taking a deep breath, she called out in her best imitation of a male voice. "All clear, boss." Just a shelf gave way. A moment's silence, then, "Well, clean it up and get back in here." Faith quickly bound and gagged the unconscious man with strips torn from her petticoat. She took his gun, checked that both weapons were loaded, and peered through the crack in the pantry door. Blackwood stood with his back to her, still interrogating Beau. The remaining guard watched the front door, unaware of the threat behind him. Faith needed to act now, before they grew suspicious of Jenkins' absence. She threw another jar, this time toward the front of the cabin. When the guard turned toward the noise, she burst from the pantry, both guns raised. "Don't move," she commanded, her voice surprisingly steady. "Hands where I can see them." Blackwood whirled around, his face contorting with rage. "You, step away from my husband," Faith ordered, "and drop your weapons. Both of you." The guard hesitated, assessing his chances. Blackwood made no move to comply. "You won't shoot, Mrs. Erikson," he said smoothly. "You don't have the nerve. Try me." Faith aimed directly at his chest. "I've just learned my brother is buried on the North Ridge. Your men put him there. Give me one reason not to pull this trigger." Something in her eyes must have convinced him she meant business. Blackwood slowly raised his hands. "Let's not be hasty. We can discuss this. Like you discussed things with James? Or with Viola?" Faith kept both men covered as she edged toward Beau. "The guard's gun. Kick it toward me." The man reluctantly obeyed. "Now untie my husband and Miss Thornton," Faith commanded. Slowly, as the guard moved to comply, Blackwood's hand inched toward his vest pocket. "I wouldn't," Faith warned. "Cooper has a rifle trained on this cabin. One signal from me, and you're dead." Blackwood froze, then relaxed, a calculating smile spreading across his face. "You're bluffing." A shot rang out, shattering a window and embedding itself in the wall inches from Blackwood's head. "Next one won't miss," Faith said calmly, silently thanking Cooper for his timing. The guard finished untying Beau and Viola. Beau immediately took the man's discarded gun, his eyes never leaving Blackwood. "You all right?" he asked Faith without turning. "Better than you, from the looks of it." She noted the bruises forming on his face with a surge of anger. "What now?" Blackwood asked, his confident facade cracking slightly. "You can't just kill us in cold blood." "No," Beau agreed. "But we can deliver you to Judge Holbrook. He's very interested in hearing about cattle rustling, kidnapping, and murder." "You have no proof." "We have the journal," Faith countered. "We have Viola's testimony. And now we know where to find my brother's body." For the first time, genuine fear flickered in Blackwood's eyes. "We can make a deal." "I have money. Save it for the judge," Beau cut him off. He gestured to the guard. "Tie them up. Use those chairs." As Viola helped secure the men, Faith kept her guns trained steadily on Blackwood. "I trusted you," Viola said bitterly as she bound Blackwood's hands. "My father trusted you. You said James was just going away for a while." "Your father knew exactly what happened," Blackwood sneered. "Ask him about the money he took to keep quiet." Viola's face paled, but she finished her task in silence. Once the men were secured, Beau signaled to Cooper with a lantern. Matthew soon joined them, reporting that the diversion had worked perfectly. Most of Blackwood's men are busy with the fire, he said. Small one, like we planned. No real damage, but enough smoke to keep them occupied. We need to get to the sheriff, Beau said. Sheriff Mills won't help, Faith reminded him. He's in Blackwood's pocket. Then we go straight to the judge. Beau winced as he moved, revealing more injuries than were initially apparent. He should be arriving on the morning train. First, I want to find my brother, Faith said firmly. Blackwood said he's buried near the North Ridge. I need to know for certain. Beau nodded, understanding in his eyes. At first light, then, they spent the remaining hours of darkness guarding their prisoners. When dawn broke, Matthew rode to town to watch for Judge Holbrook's arrival, while Cooper stayed with Blackwood and his men. Beau, Faith, and Viola headed for the North Ridge. Under Viola's tearful guidance, they found the spot where she had last seen James alive, a clearing overlooking Blackwood's property, where James had gone to confront the rancher about the rustling operation. He was so certain he was doing the right thing, Viola whispered. I begged him to just leave with me, start over somewhere else. But he said a man can't run from wrongdoing. Faith squeezed the young woman's hand. He was brave and principled. Like our father, they searched the area methodically. It was Beau who found the first sign, a tattered piece of fabric caught on a thorny bush. Faith recognized it immediately as part of James's distinctive red checked shirt. From there, it didn't take long to locate the disturbed earth of a shallow grave. Beau insisted on doing the grim work of excavation himself, despite his injuries. When he uncovered the remains, there was no doubt the pocket watch Faith had found at the cabin site was still with him, along with a small Bible inscribed by their parents. Faith knelt beside her brother's grave, tears flowing freely. We found you, she whispered, and we'll make sure justice is done. They reburied James properly, marking the spot with a cairn of stones. Faith promised to return with a proper marker once everything was settled. In town, they found Matthew waiting with unexpected news. Judge Holbrook had arrived early, along with a U.S. Marshal investigating a series of cattle thefts across the territory. The next days passed in a whirlwind of statements, evidence, and testimony. The journal proved crucial, as did Viola's account of what she had witnessed. Sheriff Mills was arrested for obstruction of justice, and Mr. Thornton for complicity after the fact. Several of Blackwood's men turned on their employer in exchange for leniency. Blackwood himself faced charges of murder, kidnapping, and cattle rustling enough to guarantee he would hang. Throughout the proceedings, he maintained a cold silence, his hatred for Beau and Faith evident in every glance. When it was over, when justice had finally been served, Faith stood at her brother's newly marked grave. The simple headstone read, James Kennedy, 1850-1877. He stood for what was right. I wish I had known him better, Beau said quietly, standing beside her. You would have liked each other, Faith replied. Both stubborn, principled men. What happens now? Beau asked. With Viola, I mean. She's going to Denver after all. Has an aunt there willing to take her in. Faith turned to face her husband. And us? What happens with us? Beau took her hands in his. That depends. Our arrangement was that you could leave once you found answers about your brother. And if I don't want to leave? A slow smile spread across his face. Then we build the life we've started. Together. Faith stepped into his embrace. I meant what I said that night. I love you, Beau Erikson. Not because you saved me, but because of the man you are. And I love you, Faith Erikson. My brave, stubborn wife who asked for work in my kitchen and ended up saving my life. You did offer to pay me in love, she reminded him with a smile. Best bargain I ever made. 1 year later, Faith stood on the porch of Blackwater Ranch, watching as Beau rode in from checking the herd. The property had flourished under their joint care. The garden expanded, the house transformed into a true home, and the ranch's reputation for fair dealing growing throughout the territory. With Blackwood gone, many of his holdings had been auctioned off. Beau and Faith had purchased the parcel containing James's unfinished cabin, incorporating it into their property. They'd completed the structure, using it as a guest house for the occasional visitor. Cooper and Matthew remained loyal hands, joined now by 2 more workers as the ranch expanded. Letters came regularly from Viola in Denver, where she had met a kind shopkeeper's son and was contemplating marriage. Judge Holbrook visited whenever his circuit brought him through, always commenting on the positive changes in Beau since his marriage. "Never seen a man so transformed by love," he'd observed on his last visit. As Beau dismounted and approached the house, Faith placed a hand on her swelling abdomen. 5 months along now, their first child due in early spring. "How are my girls today?" Beau asked, placing his hand over hers. "What makes you so certain it's a girl?" Faith teased. "Just a feeling." He kissed her softly. "Though a boy would be fine too, as long as he has your spirit." Faith leaned into his embrace. "I was thinking, if it is a girl, we might name her Clara. And if it's a boy, James." Emotion flickered in Beau's eyes. "I'd like that. Very much." As the sun set over the Wyoming hills, casting long shadows across their land, Faith reflected on the strange path that had brought her here. She had arrived desperate, seeking only work in a stranger's kitchen. Instead, she had found justice for her brother, a home, and a love deeper than she had ever imagined possible. "Penny for your thoughts," Beau murmured against her hair. Faith smiled up at him. "I was just thinking about that day I showed up on your doorstep. About what you said." "Which part?" "That you'd pay me in love if I stayed." Beau's arms tightened around her. "And have I kept my promise?" Faith stood on tiptoe to kiss him, pouring all her feelings into the gesture. "With interest, Mr. Erikson. Definitely with interest." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, the promise of their future stretching before them as vast and hopeful as the western horizon.